on cue. And we are recording this evening so that we can, both the Globe and On Cue can feature this presentation in future. So I hope everybody is comfortable with that. If you aren't, I'm sorry, we'll have to perhaps lose you from our group, but I hope everybody is comfortable with that. I'd like to, before we go much further, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. On Cue Performance Hub would like to acknowledge that we are fortunate to be operating on the traditional lands of the Nahiawak, Anishinaabe, Nakota, Lakota, and Dakota peoples, and the homeland of the Métis. Perhaps especially as we contemplate a newly refurbished cultural institution this evening, it's important for us to recognize the first peoples of this land, the value of the cultural knowledge they have drawn from the land, and our need to embrace and respect that knowledge. After the harms experienced by these people and the land itself, On Cue wants to move forward as an active player in effecting a spirit of truth and reconciliation that is so important to our collective cultural healing. So that is more than a pro forma ceremonial acknowledgement. It's a pretty central statement with respect to what On Cue is about. And so I also want to, if we're acknowledging, I want to mention that tonight is a real pleasure because both Jaime Boldt and Jennifer Bruin at the Globe Theatre have been really important supporters of On Cue Performance Hub and its goal to improve opportunities and livelihoods for performing artists and cultural workers in Regina. And it's nice for us to be able to return the favor by hosting a sneak peek of a facility that clearly is very important to our performing arts community. So I'm delighted to introduce our lead presenter this evening, and she's going to go on and introduce the architect who's responsible for the building of the Globe. Jaime is the executive director of the Globe Theatre and clearly up to the minute as to the shape the renovations are taking. But it's also nice for the community to get to know Jaime a bit. I've had the pleasure of working with her as the president of the board of directors for the Saskatchewan Arts Alliance, a job that has meant significant investment of time and talents and the well-being of our arts ecology. When she's not doing all of that, she's also using her leadership skills and graduate background in public administration and policy and her training in human justice to good purpose by serving on boards in the area of human justice, as well as teaching and facilitating in the practice of restorative justice at the U of R and Athol Murray College. She has a deep background in the administration of nonprofits, but I'll perhaps surprise her a bit tonight by, on a lighter note, observing that she and her husband are no strangers to business and profit either, as they are the owners of the Milky Way here in Regina and are responsible for some of our summer fixes of ice cream. So Jaime, with that little surprise intro.
Very good.
Thank you so much for making this presentation tonight. Everybody is eager to find out about this new building.
That's great. Thanks, Mary. That was a surprise. That's good. Yeah, Mary and I kind of talked about doing this pre-COVID and being able to give this group a sneak peek. And so, folks, you're the first community group that's going to get a look at what we've been working on over the last 18 months. And I say that because James is probably like, been a lot longer than 18 months. So with that, I'm gonna introduce James Yolk. James is a principal architect at P3 Architect. And when I say 18 months or, the better part of 2 years, for James, it's been a lot longer. It's been a passion project since, I think we do this all the time, 2015 or a little bit earlier than that. Yeah. And so P3A and specifically James has really stuck through this journey when it was a hope and a dream of Ruth Smiley and a few other really committed community people. And we're getting excited. We can see the finish line. And so we're really looking forward to sharing with you today what we've come up with. We've listened to the community, we've consulted, and we have something that I believe is going to be a real gem of our downtown and a real asset and attribute to our community. So James, I will hand it over to you. James has a PowerPoint. And then I think, as Mary said, questions, you know, we hope to have dialogue at the end. So take off your, and again, many names in here. So I look forward to seeing some of your faces after we're done when you're asking questions and stuff that are familiar to me. So hi to everybody that that I know that's in this group, and look forward to answering some questions at the end for you folks. So James.
Thanks, Jamie. I'll share my screen here. Thanks for that intro. I like to always say that architecture is a team sport, and there's a lot of people that are involved in projects like this. I think that the mythology, the Ayn Rand Wings of Desire attitude or perspective that architects are these heroic single artists is a myth. So there are probably 40 people that are involved in this project from top to bottom, and without a really skilled group, just no different than a theater company. It takes a team to put something like this together. So there's a list of some of the folks that have been involved with the project for the last couple of years. I'll walk you through a little bit of short history of the building, which I think is just interesting to set some context. And then we'll get into some detail about how the building has, the design has evolved and where it's landed. So we'll get right into it. Of course, you'd be aware that the building was built in about 1907. We love those original blueprints of the building, and actually we refer to them quite often through the design and development of the project. They're an invaluable resource. And these archival images and information really helps us figure out how we're going to deal with the building on a lot of different levels, from the architecture to the structural engineering. The building was designed by David Ewart. He was the chief dominion architect, and in those days, the federal government, of course, was trying to express the power of the federal government and the power of the dominion across the country. And civic buildings like post offices were a major way of being able to do that. This is actually the picture of the post office, which is what the building was, under construction in 1907. And interestingly enough, you can see just over in the corner here, where my little red mark is, a house. So the Northern Crown building is beside it, and there was a little house. So when we get into some of the other photos, you'll see how an addition was added later on. As part of that expression of the power of the dominion of the federal government across the country, Ewart was responsible for post offices in a lot of different locations. And in the West here, three notable ones that are all siblings of the Regina Post Office, of the Prince Edward Building, are in Vancouver, Moose Jaw, and Regina. Slight changes to the appearance and the aesthetic, but generally very, very similar. He's just applying a little different decoration to the buildings, I would say. Overall, some different materiality. In the prairies here, we have limestone, and on the West Coast, you see more granite emerging. There's a picture of the building not too long after it was complete. You'll notice that it just has one little peaked window over here on this side, and you'll see that there are only a couple of elements at the roof level. A later addition or a later renovation to the building actually extended the usable space up into the attic. And you can see the historic Northern Crown building. So we're looking down Scarth Street. I think it's just an amazing photo of what this building used to look like, and what Scarth Street in downtown Regina was like at the turn of the century. This is a photograph actually of the interior of the post office that I showed you earlier in Vancouver. But I just keep this in mind when we start showing you some renderings of what the interior of the building is going to look like. And this idea of these linear spaces with a counter that you would come and transact at, and these arched windows, these large arched windows on the main floor. Don't ask me what honey orders are. We've wondered about that for a long time in terms of going to the post office to get honey. We don't know what that means. If anybody does, you can let us know. This is a view down 11th Avenue. You see the old streetcars. You can see what's now the H&M across the street. The Starbucks used to be the Guarantee Trust when I was a kid. And where the Royal Bank building is currently sitting back over here. And then, of course, this is the view today. This building has been restored very nicely and maintained. It's in great shape. We're really pleased to see that. But you can see the evolution of downtown Regina and this grand old building that is such a fixture in our lives downtown. This is a view down Scar Street. And if you recall some of those earlier photos, I mentioned about expansion into the attic. So you can see these dormer windows being added to add some natural light to what is, I guess, the administrative areas for the Globe Theatre. You'll also see the clock face, and I didn't show that earlier. I'm just going to go back really quickly and show you that picture. There is no clock. The clock was actually added at a later date, which is quite interesting. So some of the objectives of the project and sort of an overarching perspective of it, where we want to respect the heritage of the building. So we don't want to do anything that detracts from that, the historical nature, the historical aesthetic. The interior of the building is very much devoid of most of its historical trims and finishes and things like that. The last 100 years plus have not been kind to the interior. It's been stripped down several times. So there's not a lot on the inside that is there to retain. We're uncovering a little bit here and there, but mostly the heritage aspect of it is on the exterior of the building. First and foremost, though, we want to make sure that we're improving the theater function and experience. And that is from the actor and the company's experience. We're adding a catwalk, which was not previously in the building. We're adding a trap, a stage trap, which again was not something that was previously available. In fact, there was a renovation and a bunch of structural work done. And I should remember the show, but I can't, where they had a pool in the middle of the stage, and I want to say Ophelia, but I don't think that was it. Could be. And they had to actually do a whole bunch of structural work to accommodate a very shallow pool. We really are looking at improving the patron experience. I don't think it'll even be recognizable in terms of what your patron experience is like as you come to the building. And that includes accessibility for patron, staff, and actors. It includes increasing the amount of public space in the building and improving the presence of the Globe Theatre on Scar Street in particular. And when I talk about increasing public space, you have to remember that the main floor of the building is not currently Globe Theatre space. In the new rehabilitated Globe Theatre, it's the entire building from top to bottom. So here's a model of the theater as it sits right now, and some of the challenges that it posed. You know, it's interesting. As architects, we're trained to be critical. We're critical of our own work. We're very critical of our colleagues' work. And at a glance, as a theater patron for a number of years, I go into the Globe Theatre and I think this is a really strange design, because the balconies don't look at the stage. They look down at the heads of the people sitting in the seating below. The control room is sitting up in the corner. It's not on axis with the stage. And it's this strange sort of pinwheel arrangement for an arena theater. And then as you start getting into this project and you start to realize it's actually really brilliant, they've really managed to squeeze an awful lot into a very, very small space. So it's actually quite a brilliant design, and I tip my hat at the previous designers from the 80s and 90s. That being said, we need a lot more space to make it work for a modern theater. So you may have heard Ruth Smiley refer to this as the Pumpkin Project. That's something that she and I talked an awful lot about, that essentially we were just taking this pumpkin and we were turning it into a jack-o'-lantern. We were hollowing it out. So we worked on a number of different very high-level schemes and concepts around what that theater could look like. And it has to do with the floor levels in the building and how we essentially hollow that pumpkin out. One option, we'll call it Scheme A, is hollowing it out from the top and creating a theater that extends from the second floor, where the stage would be, up to the roof, and moving the black box theater, which is represented here by the red smudge, down to the ground floor. We looked at other schemes, and this was an earlier one that we actually had, so these aren't chronological, where the theater stage level was down at the main level of the building with the trap room sitting in the basement and the black box perched on top. Very similar idea with another scheme where the black box actually pokes up through the roof, moving the stage level up from actually a basement level, in Scheme B, up to the main level in Scheme C. Sorry, I get confused. When I say there's 3 schemes, there's 30 schemes. These are just the 3 I'm showing you. Case in point, as we start to look at this project in more and more detail, our theater consultants from New York, just fantastic group, FDA, Fisher Dax and Associates, have been great to work with. If I had to, it's just as a sidebar, as a prairie guy, born and raised in Regina, I went away to go to school. It seems like an awful long time ago, and ended up coming home like few of my generation. And this, you would expect that working with somebody from New York, they would treat, sort of a relatively small, although we're the largest firm in the city with about 40 people, relatively small in terms of our profession internationally, like a bunch of local yokels, and they've been absolutely the opposite. They've been the best people to work with. It's been fantastic. But this shows you some of the exploration of how you take what I would call a round hole and put it in a square peg. So what you see here very faintly in the gray is and I'm drawing with a mouse, so I apologize. Don't let this reflect on my artistic quality. That is the outline of the Globe Theater building. And each one of these is an exploration into stage and arena bowl seating shape, and to see what would work best in terms of a hollowing out of the existing building in order to make a theater work. So you see everything from a square stage to a rectangular stage to an octagonal stage, to an octagonal theater, and permutations throughout with various numbers of seating. We went and looked at theaters in Denver. We took theaters that we saw and set them down to see how much room we would have, and just to see what the impact was. So an awful lot of work went into it. And where we landed, even though this says 444 seats, we actually, once we inserted the requirement for accessible seating and some circulation, we actually ended up with 428 seats, but within an arena theater with this shape and this basic profile, with the trap below the stage, of course, and then a simple rise up to the main circulation, or the preamble around the building, or around the bowl, and then a control booth. And this analyzes the various sight lines. And as a result, you actually end up with a very steep seating bowl, not dissimilar to what's there now. We then looked at what floors, or how this might start to lay out using those sketches that you saw earlier on. So Scheme A, looking at the main stage at the second floor here, with the seating bowl rising up. And when you put those numbers of seats in, sort of where the what we would call the balcony level lands, and it's actually a little bit below the 3rd floor. We've got the trap room. The trap sits on the main floor of the building, and then a punched volume that gives us a lot of space over top of the stage. We also looked at a cross section. This is like cutting the building like a layer cake. Looking at putting the trap room down in the basement, which you see here, and putting the stage level right at the main floor. So a number of these explorations sort of emerged out of this sketch and concept stage, and we started to explore it in 3 dimensions. Ultimately, we settled on the stage level being at the 2nd floor, and I'll explain that as I walk through the plans. So when we start to talk about a pumpkin, you can see on the left-hand side here, this is the existing building. You have the stage level on the 2nd floor, and it extends up to the 3rd floor for that, pardon me, that balcony seating. And what you see in blue and red dashed lines in the middle here is essentially what we're hollowing out of the building. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the extent of the alterations inside the building. So everything from the staircase to the outside wall at the alley is basically new within the building. It's not quite as dramatic as the College Avenue campus project that we were involved with, where we took the old residence building, which was the conservatory, or known as the conservatory, and preserved the facade of it. In this case, we're actually preserving, essentially it's like a donut, if you think of it. There's much more meat around the perimeter that we're saving. This slide shows you what the various stages of the building were. So you have the original post office building done in 1907. In the 1920s, that house gets torn down, and Story and Van Egmond copy the aesthetic of the building and extend it, creating a U shape. And then in the 1980s, you can see this pink stuff gets added. They infill to insert the old theater into the building. And now we're extending that roof even further up, and the blue is what we're infilling again. And the picture on the right-hand side gives you an idea of what that new shape looks like. It no longer has this light well on the upper floor, because that upper floor is now where our catwalk is. This gives you an idea of the existing exterior on the left, and you can see that cutout at the back of the building. You can see where that addition was, and you can see what the new building looks like, or the new infill looks like, and how the mass of the building is now this one solid object. And then the mechanical systems are all up on the roof, and we've pushed them back from the front of the building on Scarth and on 11th Avenue.
Okay, let's go.
So I'll start walking you through the plans a little bit. I think this is where you'll have probably the most interest. This is actually the basement. And what I've done here is we've highlighted 11th Avenue. 11th Avenue will always be on the top. So that's north. And I've taken a yellow box and a yellow circle to indicate the location of the main public vertical circulation. That's the main stair, and then 2 elevators. That main stair location, which is right here, that is actually where the existing elevator and stair are now. So we're taking advantage of that location and removing the elevator and the stair out of that space and putting a larger, more accessible, more easily used stair, more dramatic stair into that space. So when you come in on the main floor, you would come down the stairs, most likely, or down the elevator, and you would come into a lobby space. You come through the door and into a lobby space. That lobby space is for the theater school. And at the lower level, we have a lot of mechanical and electrical space, but we also have where we have these existing windows to the exterior that we're replacing, 2 large theater school studios. We also have a theater school office, and we have 2 of them actually. And we've got that lobby and waiting room. So you come down the stair, you're bringing your kid or you're taking part in something in the theater school. You can come and wait in the waiting room, or you would come into this studio entry. You would drop your coat off in these cubbies or these lockers, and then you would go into your class in the theater school studio. Also down on the lower level, we have our prop workshop. And again, we've located that on the north side where we can get replace the windows, the casement windows that are down low on the building, and get a little bit of natural light. We're building a spray booth, which will allow for a little bit more legal spray painting and management of props and things like that. I don't want to say they don't do things in a safe way, but necessity is the mother of invention. That's all I'll say about that. There are universal washrooms and public washrooms on the lower level in this location. And we've added a catering kitchen. If you've ever been to an event at the Globe Theatre, you know that quite often they'll have a caterer come in for a private function. You can have your canapes and snacks at intermission, and host your friends or your office or whatever. We also have on the lower level in this block here, that is the this area here is the accessible dressing rooms for the Black Box Theater. Actors will be able to use this space. There's a green room here, a couple of larger accessible change rooms or dressing rooms, and a couple of accessible washrooms. Actors would use the staircase at the back here, which would allow them to access back of house up to the Black Box Theater. There's also a wardrobe storage area and a couple of other storage spaces for the building, as well as a control room and live room, which you see down in the bottom here. These are just being shelled in right now, but the idea here is it provides a space for the Globe Theatre to start doing voiceovers and things like that down the road. So we're talking about a very tight area. This heavy gray line across the middle is actually the existing load-bearing wall that's carrying the addition and the original building up above. The Northern Crown building where Beer Brothers is located down here. It's a lot of things. I always say that not only is this a pumpkin and it's a round hole in a square peg, but it's also 12 pounds of potatoes in a 10-pound sack in terms of the program. So it's every cliche you can imagine. I'm sorry, I'll just go back really quickly to the previous. And over on the other side here, you can see a little bit of a 3-dimension. So here's the staircase, here's the lobby, here's the 2 large studios and the little cubby locker space for the students. This area here are the dressing rooms. The staircase that the actors will use is back here. Control room and live room are located here. Props and wardrobe. The upper floor, the main floor of the building, because of a very challenging environment in the construction industry right now, we're extremely budget challenged. So unfortunately, we're not replacing the ramp on the outside of the building or the stairs that were added. And I have I'll editorialize myself here. Unfortunately, it's not coming off right now. We do have drawings and a concept for how this can be improved, but for the time being, it'll stay the way it is. So you'll enter the theater, the building, very much the way that you used to. There's an entrance here and an entrance here. The yellow again marks that vertical circulation through the building. And you can see this linear, basically lobby that runs along Scar Street. We have our box office located here. So you'll come in, you'll go over to the box office, get your tickets, and then head over to the staircase or the elevators and head upstairs. The Black Box Theater is located here. So there's an opportunity for the theater to be going on with patrons moving up to the upper floor. Tickets can be collected on the upper level. And you can also have a ticketed spot to get into the Black Box Theater. So this lobby now acts as a Black Box Theater lobby with an entrance here and an entrance here. And I'll show you some more about the Black Box. But off of the Black Box, we have our back of house. We have a corridor that leads to the trap room. This is the trap room for the main stage theater above. We have a paint and prop area, or not prop, set scenery area, and a carpentry shop next to a large production office and a more private office adjacent. Included with the box office is the coat check, and that's what you see lining the walls here is the coat check with a sales office. So instead of now coming, as you do now, coming into the building and having to, you know, unless you're in the know and you know where the box office is and how to get there, you wouldn't necessarily know to head up to the 4th floor. Now the opportunity is there to come into the building, get your tickets, and head out. It's a will call. It's a public space on that main floor. And the thought is that with the building open during the day, there's an opportunity for the Globe Theatre to have little cafe. If they want to staff it, they can sell coffees, or it can be used as the bar for the Black Box Theatre, or another bar can be set up in the lobby space as a portable bar. And I'll show you images of how this Black Box Theatre can be organized and arranged. The public washrooms for this level are located adjacent to the elevators. Okay, I'll go to the next level. So the second level, if you recall from that diagram, is our stage level. And as opposed to the existing Globe Theatre where the stage is on the second level, as opposed to having the public space on the second level, it has now become the back of house for the building. So you would not come out onto this floor. You would continue up to the 3rd floor as a patron. But as an actor, you now have a much more significant runabout around the main stage. So you can see the main stage with 4 VOMs, 1 on each corner, not altogether different than it is now. It's that octagon shape with all the seats facing the stage, and the stage is increased in size a little bit. And you can see this grid pattern on the stage, and that marks the edges of the trap room below. So we have a little bit of a solid floor, and that allows us to have some accessible seating down at the stage level, and I'll show you that in a little bit more detail. So we now have a proper runabout or runaround for the main stage. It has the ability to manage and handle sets and larger things coming up on what is a new larger lift. I won't say it's a freight elevator, but it's a large capacity elevator at the back of the building, and that's a new insertion. All of the dressing rooms for the main stage, I should say, are located on the south side down here. So that's our 2 sets of doors that come from the scene dock and from the green room into the runabout. And if you think about the size of the existing Black Box or the existing Sandbox Theatre, that's now the rehearsal hall. So if you think about how much larger that Black Box is down on the main floor, it's quite a significant change. And it also means that that Black Box is accessible to the public. It's much more readily available. It's easier to get to, and it doesn't interfere with the patron flow coming up to the main stage theater. Also on this floor, we have the wardrobe department, complete with a number of fitting rooms, a dye room, as well as a stage management office right off of the runabout. So that gives the opportunity to expand the access to wardrobe for shows. And it also gives them lots and lots of natural light into the sewing room and into the design room. We also have natural light coming into that rehearsal hall. And the dotted line that you see in the rehearsal hall here is matching the size of the stage. So the objective was to have a clear space within the rehearsal hall that matched the size of the stage. So you can see that in the 3D here. You've got the staircase and the 2 elevators. You've got the stage level. You can see the runabout coming around the perimeter. Oops, I'm sorry. So this one here coming around the perimeter. There's a corridor outside of that that also helps us control the sound. And you can see how that main stage theater is starting to nestle itself into the building. There's the rehearsal hall, and these are the dressing rooms. So this is where the back of house action happens. So now the third floor becomes the lobby space. This becomes the patron level. So instead of coming to the Globe Theatre, coming onto the stage, which has always been an awkward way to move to your seat. It restricts what they can do for sets. It restricts how they set shows up. Now you'll be able to do what needs to be done on the stage level, because all of your patrons will be coming in these light and sound locks. And there's 4 of them, 1 in each corner. And they will be coming onto what is a balcony level, and I'll show you what that main stage looks like, off of this lobby space that wraps around in an L shape on the 11th Avenue and Scar Street sides. So this becomes your major public space, and you will come down to your seat. So if you've been to Mosaic Stadium, it's actually a very similar concept to that, where the bulk of the seats are accessed from above, and it makes for a very efficient way to load in and load out when you have a crowd. We have 2 bars on this level, not dissimilar to what we have now, although they're, I would say, significantly upgraded. And we also have a couple of washrooms on this level that are significantly larger than what we have in the existing building. The idea of being able to make efficient use of time for patrons and improve their experience, and washrooms are a very important part of that. We also have our control room, and that control room is right on axis with the center of the stage, as opposed to being askew and off to one side. We have our large lift at the back that gives us access through a large set of double doors to bring in large sets that can actually be brought in and then drop down into the vomitory and moved onto the stage. So what we're looking for here in the design is a lot of flexibility and improved acoustics, and I'll talk more about that, and an improved patron experience in terms of flow and just overall feel of the space. So again, over here, we've got our stair. You'll come out of the stair or out of the elevators. There's a bar in this location, a bar in this location. You move into the theater primarily through this door, and then one at this location. There's also one back in this location. However, you're able to actually walk all the way around the perimeter of the theater, accessing any one of the exits and entrances, which is obviously quite different from how the current theater works. And then we have our washrooms, and we have our some more of our back of house storage and things like that. I'm going fairly quickly. I'm about halfway through. Some of the last ones are just images, so I hope I'm catching the high points for you and telling you what you want to hear. The 4th floor remains the administrative heart of the Globe Theatre. You'll come up the stairwell or off of the elevator into a little bit of a lobby space. We've got a vastly improved boardroom. We've got a number of offices, a little waiting room, universal washrooms. You'll see that accessibility through the building is vastly improved. Bunch of office spaces and things like that, but most notably when it comes down to the function of the theater is a state-of-the-art catwalk system, something that does not exist in the existing theater. So we've now added the ability to raise and lower sets. We've added the ability to rig from catwalks, as opposed to having to drop the rigging system and light from the stage level and lift it back up. Fully accessible, state-of-the-art, really equivalent to, I mean, we toured theaters all through the US, including the National Theater, Arena Theater in Washington, DC, and this catwalk system is not dissimilar from there. This is one of my favorite images. When the project is done, I want to get this framed and put up in the office. It shows you the complexity of what's going on in this theater. So you've got the main floor, the 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor roof. The boxes on the top represent our mechanical units that we're putting on the roof of the building. You can see the trap room volume sitting here. You can see the black box theater beside it on the main floor. And then you can see that volume of the main stage theater with the catwalk and rigging system that is now available above. You have to think that right now, where the underside of those catwalks are, that's the top of the theater. So we've blown this thing out, increased the height of it, and the mechanical systems are all buffered from the main stage theater by this volume, an acoustic ceiling, and this volume up above the rigging and catwalk system. So the acoustics will be greatly improved in the building. One of the challenges that we had is that the rise and run on the theater seating doesn't get you all the way up to the 3rd floor. So we've had to do this sort of 2-tiered system for this balcony that runs around the perimeter. And I've got some good images that show that. You can see the corridor on the main floor. You can see our storage and runabout, dramatically improved spaces. So this image is looking, I'm standing on the main floor. I've got my back to Scarth Street, kind of Scarth and 11th. I backed into the corner. The glass element that you see right here is actually the entrance off of Scarth. And this opening, and there's another one in the background, it's a little fuzzy, are the entrances into the Black Box Theater. This is the entrance to get into the staircase that'll take you up through the building. You can see we've had a little fun with the shape of the lights. These doors would be held open so that on event days, you'd be able to move up to the main stage. We have our elevators located here on the left-hand side, and this corridor takes you to the 11th Avenue exit. It's not an entrance anymore. It's more of a backstage or staff entrance and the public washrooms. But I wanted to show you this so that you could get a little bit of a feel of how the public access to the Black Box is really front and center. So I'll talk a little more about the Black Box now. That lobby space in each one of these images is in this area here. So the view that we were just looking at was sort of looking this direction down that hallway. So the 2 entrances into the Black Box are here and here. We have an elevated control booth, which is sitting right here, and that's accessible via a lift. So it's 100% accessible. And the theater consultant with our office looked at a number of configurations for how that Black Box Theater might be used. It could be used as an end stage. It could be used as an arena. It could be used as a middle stage, and it could be used as a thrust stage, depending on how you organize the space within the seating within the Black Box. And remembering that our floor-to-floor height, which I didn't mention, on the main floor is significantly higher than it is on the other floors, which allows you lots more opportunity to do interesting things in the Black Box than you had previously. So there's an image of what that Black Box Theater looks like, and we're looking back at the 2 entrances, public entrances. The back of house entrance is kind of floating in the bleachers, but it's off to my right, behind in the bottom of the screen, and you can see the control room window in the background. The main stage, as I had noted earlier, we're at 428 seats, and the blue arrows are actually pointing at all of the locations that we have accessible seating in the building. So the objective here, we obviously can't put accessible seating in the middle of a row because you have to go down and upstairs to get to them. But we wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for accessible seating in a variety of areas. So every corner of the balcony essentially has accessible seating. We have the opportunity for accessible seating right down at the stage level. So there's an opportunity for a different experience. And we have a couple of bariatric seats as well. So oversized seats for people that are larger. And you can see one of them, for example, right here. There's one right there. Again, the shape of the theater and the ability to walk, you can come into the building or into the theater, you come through the light and sound lock, and then you make your way down to your seat on the balcony, or you would make your way down a short set of stairs, down to the main aisle and over to your seat. And when you leave, if you felt like you wanted to leave and go out a different exit, you could certainly do that. You could leave and go out a different exit. So you see how every single seat is facing some or all of the stage. The control room is on this drawing. I'm not sure because we've trimmed it, but the control room is on axis with the center of the stage. Actually, I think it's down here. And the seats are also removable. So what you see in this blow up down in the corner over here is how you can have a seat made accessible for a wheelchair by removing the seat, and then you can have the companion chair beside it. So this is an earlier stripped down diagram of what that looks like. And you can see in this version, there's a single row of seats on this balcony. You can see the 4 Vaughns, one in each corner. And it was interesting, this analysis kind of led us to the idea that, you know, that if you're alone sitting up here as a single row, you don't feel like you're as much a part of the show. So we actually added a second row of seats up here and did a little bit of a raked floor. And that's what you see here. So you can actually see 2 rows of seats in this image. This is what it would look like. It's very difficult to render a dark space, by the way, and show it. So it's all dark. You come in, but you'd have this ring of lights around the theater. You can see the catwalk up above. You can actually see that this catwalk has a bit of a belly to it. That's an acoustic treatment and allows the actors' voices to bounce off of hard surfaces where we need hard surfaces so that they can reach every seat in the house without amplification. On the other hand, areas like the face of these balconies and some of the walls need to be highly absorptive. But anyway, this is what it would look like as you're coming into the show. And then with the theater lighting going, this is what it would look like during a show. So some of the acoustic treatment that's going on in the building, in the main stage, as I said, the face of all of these balconies are faced in heavily sound absorbing material. We have acoustic material that reflects sound on the underside of the balconies. And then you can see this purple line over here. This is actually if you took a line and followed what all of these lines and bulkheads are doing. And all of these shapes and all of these angles have been precisely engineered by our acoustic engineer to achieve the optimum amount of both bounce and reverberation and control of sound to enhance the acoustics within the space. Don't ask me how it works. It's got lots of numbers on it. I mentioned the rigging system and the catwalk system. You can see the catwalk here. We're supplying all of our air to the space, comes from above, and it comes in at a low velocity and basically drops. We're typically cooling theaters. We're not heating them. And you can see the extent of rigging and structure in order to create that catwalk and rigging space up above. This is a cross section through the seating, showing how the person sitting in the control booth has a view down to the stage over the heads of patrons, as well as the ability to look up and see what's going on in the catwalk. So this is a little diagram that shows, I mean, one of the challenges we have is we're gutting an old building, and then we have to go and convince the city of Regina that it'll be safe. And we've actually enhanced the safety, the life safety for patrons and actors in the theater through what I think is a very clever way of managing fire rating. So that's what you see. FRR is a fire rating. So a 2-hour fire rated wall. If there was a fire going in the space outside, say in the office area, and you were in the theater, it would protect you for 2 hours before the fire would be able to get into the space. So really a safe area. It also gives you a good idea of how that floor to floor height varies. So you've got the main floor where the black box is, and then you've got much shorter floor to floor heights on the other levels. So we're taking advantage of that in the black box. And you can see the trap and our main stage. So again, some quick images for you. This is that same image of the lobby that I showed you earlier off of Scar Street, the main public lobby. This is if you've now turned, and instead of looking south in this previous image towards the black box, now I'm going to turn and look the other way towards the box office. So we have the cafe and the box office sitting here, and those elevators are just around the corner from where I am. So this is actually two images. I tried to get rid of the bottom one from a previous presentation, and my technical limitations were a challenge. This is the box office and the coat check. So there's a information screen. We've got this idea of these openings, these theatrical type of openings, accessible, handicap accessible countertops, so that patrons who are in wheelchairs or scooters have absolute access to all of the staff that are working. We've got our little cafe area where for some reason we decided to highlight the coat check and box office sign. I don't know why. This is looking down the hallway towards the washrooms. The elevators are on my right. And then this is into the washrooms. And you know what? I'm going to let Jamie talk a little bit about the washrooms and the philosophy at the end. Okay, Jamie?
Yep.
And I'm almost there, actually. This is what that new staircase looks like that rises up through the building. It's much larger than it used to be, a much more comfortable physical way of moving vertically through the building than I actually fell down the stairs at the Globe once upon a time. And it was a business visit. I hadn't had some drinks at the theater, but they were tell you what, you walked up there in the middle of winter with wet boots, and it was dangerous. So this is the third floor lobby. I've come off the elevator, walked around the corner, and I'm standing in the lobby space looking at one of the main bars. I know it's hard to believe it's the same building. And again, back to our main stage, a vastly improved environment for patrons, for actors. The flexibility and robustness should be able to accommodate any creative venture that the Globe Theatre wants to explore. Is it, if we had $20 billion, we could have done more, but I'll tell you, there's a hell of a lot happening for what's available to make this project work. Jamie, do you want to talk about the bathrooms and some of the philosophy around how the Globe Theatre is approaching these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really looked into all gendered washrooms. And James, you want to go back to that one picture, maybe?
I'll do that.
So we really explored that on and consulted deeply on this. And so you'll see here, and we're not sure this is the design that will be, but there will be some kind of marking. So this is an all gendered washroom. This is located on the main floor, the community level. And we decided that was really important to us. And to have that on that main floor and community level. So James, you can probably describe better what those washrooms would mean, but it's floor to ceiling or floor doors that start on the floor and go up. There's a common hand washing station, and it's kind of got a flow through to it that gives some privacy, but also is very inclusive. And so we didn't actually carry that on into the third floor. We do have gendered washrooms, and then we have a fully accessible washroom on the third floor. We did some deep diving into to our patrons and demographics, and felt like on our third floor that it was a better option for us at this time to go with the gendered washrooms on the third floor. But this was for sure a commitment that we wanted to make in our community, on our community kind of floor, where we feel like there's going to be a lot of folks using that space. And yeah, so that's a little bit about that story.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you very much, James. That's really such an exciting presentation. Really creates enthusiasm, certainly for me, I have a question, and I'm going to get my question in first in a very selfish sort of way here. But first, I'll just remind people, if you could put your questions into the chat, and I'll just call on you, and then you can do your question verbally. It just helps me identify who wants to ask a question. So I'll lead off and give people time to put questions in the chat. I'm sure you probably anticipate the question I'm going to ask, because this, of course, just generates all kinds of enthusiasm and excitement. So I guess I'd like to know, in terms of your schedule, where are you now in building this wonderful facility, and when can I attend the first show?
James, do you want to do the where are we now?
Yeah, the pumpkin is in the process of being hollowed out. They've actually lifted equipment into the basement. The whole floor in the basement is coming out. There's new piles going in. These are concrete pegs that go down into the clay that bear the weight of what's going on above. So all of that work is going on right now. We're actually in sort of this strange place where we're taking bits out of it and adding some of the infrastructure back in, and that's where we are right now. We're just completing, while the construction manager is doing that work, we're just completing the set of drawings that sort of encompasses everything that you see above the ground, all of the architecture, the mechanical systems, and the electrical systems, and those are just about ready to hit the street, as it were, for tender.
Great.
So time frame would be, the goal is, knock on wood, that we be moving back in the fall, late fall of 2023, and welcoming patrons back in early in the new year of 2024.
Great. Okay. That's a long time to wait, but it looks like we have lots of good things to, it will be worth the wait, obviously. So perhaps people would like to, maybe we might come back to the screen share, but perhaps at this point we could leave the screen share and encourage people to put their videos on, and they can unmute if they have a question that they want to ask. And so let me start here.
Did I stop sharing? Are we good?
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
We're
you're good.
we're all set, James. Thank you so much. So Mark Claxton, do you want to ask a question? Mark. Are you there, Mark?
Mark, maybe you're on mute.
Or just share your screen and whatever.
Oh,
Okay. All right. How much larger is the main stage performance space?
do you have that?
I knew it. I actually, when I was sitting here waiting for this to start, I thought I'd better send a note off to one of the technologists, and maybe he'll get it, the email, and be able to tell me. And he came back with how big it will be, not how big it was. So I'm going from memory.
Yeah.
And I believe it's, for some reason, 18 feet square jumps to mind. Jamie, do you know?
My mind goes 18 by 20.
Okay.
And then the new.
The new.
Oh, Kennelly's on here. Kennelly, way to go. Kennelly says it is 21 by 20.
Okay.
I thought it was 18 too.
I thought it was 18 too. So
Mhm.
it is, the new one is 21 by 21 with all of the seating on the lowest level. And it can expand by taking the seating out to just about 24 feet square.
Okay, so it's very similar, the two spaces, right? So I take it there are, I noticed that there are columns in that second stage space. I assume those were load-bearing columns that you had to include. Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned if we had another $10 million, what we would have done, and those columns would not have been there if we'd had another
Right.
10 or $20 million. But no, it was the size of the clear space between the columns is larger than what was worked around previously in the second stage. So it's an improvement both from height and clear space and size, but no, we weren't able to defy gravity.
As a Shakespearean, I just want to observe that probably the most famous playwright, at least in the West anyway, Shakespeare, he and his actors worked around two columns prominently displayed on the stage. So columns can be used as well as problems. So how about some more questions, folks? If it's faster, you can just unmute yourself and ask the question here.
I have a very simple question. First of all, it's fabulous. It just looks so exciting and beautiful. Did you mention, James, what the seating capacity of the black box was? If you did, I missed it.
It varies depending on the configuration. So I want to say that it varies from about 200 to about, well, down to, 20 up to about, I want to say it was at about 260, Jamie?
I think it was 160.
160.
165.
Sorry,
160. I think 165. Yeah,
okay,
just because of sight lines. There was a slide that James showed, and I think there was 5 or 6 configurations, and I think it had the seating numbers underneath. And so because of those columns, we really looked into what the sight lines were, and it did reduce our numbers, but it's 100 bigger than what we have right now.
Right. Good. That's great. Could you tell us a little bit, Jamie, about what the thinking is around that second space and how you want to use it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, if you recall in the design where James talked about being able to come in off of Scar Street on the doors closest to the second stage and what we are calling our community theater. And so that was really intentional. And if you, when James showed that view and looking down, you'll see those glass doors that can be shut and really isolating that space. So there can be entrance, there doesn't have to be, what we were trying to do is figure out a way to reduce costs for the community to be able to use it. I'll start with that. And one way we thought was figuring out a way to make that an isolated area and space so that we don't need to worry. We can hand the keys over to a community group and they're able to come in and use that space without worrying about the rest of the building. And so being able to secure that off. So we're really excited about how the design turned out and with the ability to do that with back of house, as you saw, and the entranceway, separate entranceway, being able to set up a separate ticketing, and even being able to close off and they can use box office as well as the code check if Globe doesn't have an event going on, but we can still do it if Globe has an event going on and separate the two events. And so we really spent a lot of time thinking about how are we going to make this this accessible in terms of financially accessible for community groups to be able to use. And I think we came up with the best way in order to do that. Again, access on the main floor was really important to us in terms of thinking too for community use.
Okay, thank you. That's great information. That's very promising for lots of people in the community here. I have a question from Misty Selinger, and Misty is typing because she has some background noise there. I'm wondering how the fundraising campaign is going and if the campaign has been impacted by the increase in material costs since the pandemic.
Misty is a fundraiser, so that's of course, Misty, you'd ask that question of us. So I would say in terms of the fundraising, we haven't gone public yet with where we're at, and that's one sneak peek I can't give you today, but I'll say this, stay tuned for something next week, and you'll hear. But it's gone really well. We're really happy with where we're at with our fundraising. In spite of a pandemic, we we have had some great success and some great supporters in the community of this project. And then I'll let James talk about escalation prices.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride in the industry with the pandemic and with inflation. It's actually not been as bad as it was during the boom years, where contractors wouldn't hold their prices for even a week. But no, we've seen an increase that has had a pretty dramatic effect on our bottom line of the project because of the very, very tight budget on it. I would say that we've seen at least a 5 to a 10% increase sort of across the board. And that becomes pretty significant when you're trying to absorb that into a project. So subsequently, we've had to, not, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there are some things that we're not doing that we would have liked to have done. And maybe what we tried to do is eliminate things that don't paint us into a corner that we can go back and do should more money become available, or if there's an opportunity to obtain other grant money in the future. It's not something that is going to affect the operations of the Globe Theatre, I would say, is the way that we've approached it.
Okay, these certainly are challenging times. On the other hand, if you had to close down the theater and do a renovation, you actually chose the right time as far as disruption is concerned, because you would have been disrupted anyway. So it's odd how things have worked out for the Globe in this respect. Are there any people who have any more questions? We have grilled our presenters tonight.
No.
No, okay, they're asking for more. Okay.
I'm not going to come on camera because I am packing up my room as it is, but listening in. And I'm really excited about the trap room underneath the stage. I'm an actor. I worked at the Globe in the old building, and it was a very small space beneath, and there's so much room there. I'm wondering about the plans for that space, like if there's hydraulics that's going to be in there, or what was in the image that we saw, because I saw some mechanical things.
You happen to have hit on one of the elements that is a deferral. There won't be any hydraulic lift or anything like that included in the project, but there is the ability to remove and manipulate the floor and then bring in a lift on a sort of a show-by-show basis, whatever the whim of the designer and the budget of the show allows for. So we did look at, the theater in Washington that we looked at, the trap floor, the main stage floor, was actually just simply supported on essentially scaffolding. And then it gave them the most amount of flexibility. And then we saw one in Denver that had about a $150,000 hydraulic lift system that looked like it could lift a nuclear submarine up to the stage level. So we sort of saw the two extremes. Our budget was for the scaffolding version.
Thank you. Well, there's still, you can still do things a lot with that.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I think Jennifer snuck on. She probably, I think she's camping. Jennifer, are you around? I don't see you right now, but she I'm sure we'll have some feedback too about all the fun things we can do with that space.
Okay, well,
Jennifer, are you around?
Jennifer, do speak up if you're there.
Yeah.
Don't hear.
Okay.
So one last question, if somebody has a question. Otherwise, we're going to, okay. So Leslie has a question. Can I ask what the total budget is for the project?
Jamie, I look at you
Sure.
to tell me if it's...
We're good. Yeah, I think we're good to announce it. I think it's been pretty public. It's 31.4 million. We're trying to hold the line. much. James, I know this is an ongoing battle and conversation with, as you've heard, but 31.4 million. So that's Globe contributing about 5 million and the rest from the provincial, federal, and city municipal government.
Great.
Let's just say 31.4 million doesn't buy you what it used to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's certainly to many of us who've seen the Globe evolve over quite a period of time. This is a magnificent transformation. So let's see. I see lots of thanks in the chat here. And so I will add my thanks to James and Jamie for a wonderful presentation and for your patience in answering our questions. I just want to end with perhaps Rania, if you're on right now, maybe you could do a plug for On Cue's next event, if you're there. Otherwise, I will do that plug. Not sure whether
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm here.
Good. Great, Rania. Could you talk a bit about Making It Right?
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much for the presentation. It was great to learn more about the history of the building. You know, I'm an immigrant and I've been here in Regina for the past 10 years. That was very exciting to learn about the history of the building and you know, how it started. So thank you for that. It was amazing. And I'm looking forward for the future and using the space along with the community and the rest of the artists. Thank you. Yes, for Making It Right. So the next event is coming up on October 2nd. We are meeting a group of newcomer and Indigenous artists meeting at the Mackenzie Art Gallery. It's going to be, I think, a very exciting discussion about art practice, about truth and reconciliation, about Indigenous artists leading us as newcomer artists to the future and leading us in the right way. So I'm looking forward to see everyone there. Thank you, Mary.
Okay. That's at 2 o'clock on October the 2nd at the
Yes.
Mackenzie Gallery. We do have the event on our website, which is very simple, oncueregina.ca. And you can go there and not only see this upcoming event, but also further events during the fall here, and then the start of our mini season, which will be in January, beginning in January. The Making It Right event, simply because of our COVID situation, has a limited capacity of audience members of 30. So it's important to go to our website and try to register for that because we're only taking registrations, not people just walking in without a registration. So that's important to go register for that event. We will be following all COVID protocols to keep people safe. So any last comments, Rania, on that event? Are we all set?
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you. Good to see you
very
there.
good.
Thanks.
Well, a huge thank you to Jamie and James again, and thank you all for coming out tonight and for your great questions. And we'll all keep our ears to the ground for next week and further information about fundraising that's so important to make it happen. So
thank you all so much.
Very
It
much.
was lovely
Have a
to
great
share this
weekend.
with you. Yeah, thanks again.
Bye.
Thanks, Mary.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, James.